So quickly, I'm just going to go over a few slides, and then we're going to dive into how RECUR360Pay and Merchant Track work from a transaction and funding and how to make deposits. A little bit of background. On February 28th of this year, the RECUR360 platform was acquired by Full Steam Payments. Full Steam is a payment processing company. Prior to that, RECUR360 was agnostic to payment processors, and we connected to many different ones. And going forward, we are only going to support RECUR360Pay. RECUR360Pay launched March 1st, 2023, and it's our proprietary payment processing platform for both credit card and ACH. We started onboarding customers as of March 1st for all new customers that came to RECUR360. And on June 1st, we started sending notices via email and pop-up within the platform to all customers and logins about having to sign up for RECUR360Pay and migrate your customer stored payment methods from your existing processor to RECUR360Pay. We do not store payments inside of RECUR360. They are what's called tokenized and encrypted through the payment processor's gateway, and then we're given a token. So anytime a payment processes, we're triggering a token at the payment processor for it to process. And that's one of the things that makes us PCI compliant, is that we don't store those payment methods. They get entered through our platform into a hosted form for the existing payment processor. So if you're on any other payment processor, including RECUR360Pay, payments are stored within that module. They are not stored in RECUR360, and they are not extractable out of RECUR360. Which is why we started sending this notice as of June 1 to let people know the sooner you sign up, the sooner we can migrate those payment methods from your existing payment processor gateway and get them over to RECUR360Pay. And there's a few methods for that. So we've been sending out this notice since the beginning of June, letting people know that we are going to be disconnecting virtually all existing payment processors. On January 31st of 2024, we will be disconnecting Authorize.net. And on February 29th of 2024, we will be disconnecting all other US-based payment processing. That includes Intuit, NMI, Paya, USAE Pay, and Elavon, and Stripe for US processing. We will keep Canadian processing connected, preferably switch over to Stripe for Canadian processing, because they have a better API for us to integrate with. For the months of January and February of 2024, all payments that are not processed through RECUR360Pay will be assessed a 0.3% surcharge unless you've started or have been approved for an application for RECUR360 by the end of this year, so a week from this coming Monday. So how do you get stored payment methods out of your existing processor and over to RECUR360Pay? Authorize.net has a token export process through their support. Stripe does as well. We have links to their processes because you have to log into their websites to create a ticket in order to do so. USAE Pay and NMI, you would email their support requesting a token migration export. For Paya, they will not do credit card token exports, but we can export out their ACH tokens from My Online Reports. So that's at least half of the migration. Intuit doesn't allow any token migrations. Every processor out there has tried to get Intuit to export tokens, and they simply won't. And all migrations can take upwards of 30 days. So in the meantime, if you are on one of the processors that does support a token migration, or if you're on Intuit or Paya for credit card and they don't, we have a bulk customer email functionality within RECUR360 that allows you to send an email to all customers that have a payment method, that have a recurring invoice, that aren't within RECUR360Pay to let them know to update their payment method. This is good anytime you change payment processors, as well as to update customer payment methods for PCI compliance. So RECUR360Pay, one of its unique features is Merchant Track. Merchant Track is an integrated dashboard for transactions and funding, as well as a virtual terminal where you can go and void transactions or refund transactions after they've settled. This is very similar to the individual websites that you used to log into directly for USAPay, NMI, Intuit Merchant Services, and so on. This is all accessible directly from inside of RECUR360 through single sign-on. So you only have to log into RECUR360. In the left panel, click into Merchant Track, and we have reporting built into RECUR360 as well that synchronizes transaction statuses. We can set security restrictions on who in your organization, based on their login, can access Merchant Track and what they can do inside of it. Inside of Merchant Track is where you'll view all transactions and funding summaries once those transactions have funded. As I mentioned, you can void transactions in RECUR360 as long as it's on the same day and the payment hasn't batched out or settled yet. You can also go to refund transactions in Merchant Track after they've settled, usually a day or two after the settlement. Merchant Track will also show your funding reports and your monthly statements, as well as your monthly fees. RECUR360Pay has enhancements to RECUR360. I've already mentioned single sign-on. RECUR360Pay has a transaction sync history report inside of RECUR360's report list, which will show you all of your funding statuses. We have an account updater that you can enable, which for $1 for every update will update credit card expirations automatically, or you can use our email notifications to send out pre-expiration emails. As we've always had, there's no charge for that. That's part of the platform. For those of you that were not on Paya, we have an ACH, NSF, and credit card chargeback automation, which is built into the RECUR360Pay settings. These allow us to create NSF and chargeback invoices, remove or block bad payment methods after they've been charged back or returned as insufficient funds or account not found. You can add assessment fees for each chargeback or NSF. And anytime one happens, under our notifications for your login, you can configure a notification to be emailed to you anytime one of those occur. Our goal is that everybody logs into RECUR360 and Merchant Track to see this data and to cut down on emails that other merchants would have sent you every time something happened, so that you're constantly logging in to look at the data and not relying on email, which is very vulnerable these days for that kind of financial information. Part of RECUR360Pay is we can build out our own enhancements integrated into RECUR360. So future enhancements that we plan to roll out in the coming months is that anytime transactions are funded, we will auto-create bank deposits inside of your QuickBooks Desktop and online. We will auto-create expenses in QBO and checks in QuickBooks Desktop for your monthly fees if you're on what's called daily gross settle. If you're on daily net settle, where fees come out daily, those fees will be deducted from your daily deposits. We're going to be adding the functionality to void payments from within RECUR360Pay under the transaction sync history report, so that you don't have to log into Merchant Track to do that. We're going to be adding the functionality to refund payments from within RECUR360Pay's transaction sync history report, and that will create a refund receipt in QuickBooks Online or a credit memo and refund in QuickBooks Desktop. We will be adding monthly statements accessible via the RECUR360 Reports module. If you're a business that's growing outside of QuickBooks, we will be adding in NetSuite integration. And for startups that aren't on QBO or QuickBooks Desktop, we'll be adding Xero integration sometimes towards Q4 of 2024. And in 2024, towards the end of it, we'll be rolling out our own Canadian processing, similar to what we're doing with RECUR360Pay for US processing today. So for those of you that have not signed up for RECUR360Pay yet, there's a link to the application in this PowerPoint, which I've uploaded a link to in the chat. And there's also a link to the application. We are less than Authorize.net. We are less than Stripe. We are less than Intuit. The only thing we wouldn't be less than is if you had some sort of customized rates through your bank tied to your bank accounts with your bank, in which case, if you can submit your statement, 3 months of statements to us, we can at least get an analysis for you on what's called your effective rate, which is typically interchange plus basis points plus transaction fees plus all sorts of other fees that they don't tell you about when you sign up for those other payment processing. Ours is a flat rate of 2.8% per transaction plus a 50-cent transaction fee. And sometimes the network carriers do pass through other fees, and if and when those happen, those fees will pass through to you as well. We have a monthly fee of $9.95 for what's called PCI breach protection. That protects you in the event that for some reason you are not PCI compliant. Our platform obviously is, and somehow your stored payment methods got breached. So that's what that is. It's an insurance policy, so to speak. For every credit card that gets charged back, there's a $25 transaction fee. We have next business day funding after settlement. What that means is if you process payments today with next business day funding, they will batch out tonight, they will settle tonight, and they should fund and look as pending by the end of the next business day. If it's over a weekend, it would skip to the following business day, as long as it's not a holiday. And these rates are locked for 12 months from the time you sign up. On the ACH side, we charge 50 cents per transaction if that transaction is up to $5,000. Then we charge 0.3% for any amount over $5,000. If you have requirements for large ACHs, we can request that with underwriting, and that will be approved so that you don't have any limits on the ACH. We have a monthly service fee of $9.99. Every returned fee is $25 a transaction. And we offer next business day funding after settlement. So again, at 8 o'clock tonight, Central Time, your batch will close. It will then go into settlement and then into funding. So it will fund usually the next business day or the following business day. Intuit and many other processors loaned money, where if you process $1 today, $1 would be in your bank tomorrow. They were actually providing you a loan. In ACH banking time, it takes 3 to 5 days for it actually to work through the network. And so we don't loan until we see that it's going to settle, and then we'll put the money in when it settles. So you can also opt for standard funding, which can be 4 to 5 business days. And that way you don't actually have to deal with insufficient funds. If you're on next business day funding and after settlement, there's no money in their bank account, then that's why we have insufficient funds automation to automatically account for that in our platform. For those of you that don't know, we have a knowledge base that allows you to view all of the articles on how to do things within RECUR360, and there's a link for that. So with that, I'm going to jump into both QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online functionality, since we support both. I'm going to go to QuickBooks Desktop first. So if you are inside of your RECUR360, in the left panel, we have reporting, and we have a transaction sync history report. So anytime a payment processes through RECUR360 into RECUR360Pay, those payments will be populated in this report. The benefit of this report is over on the right side, it will show you the status of that payment. So when it processes, it is in a batch status. At the end of the day, when that batch closes, it may go to settled status, and it'll show the settlement date under the settlement column. And when that funds to your bank, it'll show as funded and it'll show the funded ID. Then from within RECUR360Pay, you can click into Merchant Track. Merchant Track is where you will see all of the transactions on the gateway. And you can do a search or you can just view them all. In addition, you will see all of the funding deposits. So these are the recent funding deposits that just went through. This is funding ID 25768. If I go back to my transaction sync history report, I will see 25768. And from here, I can directly click into it and it'll take me right into that funding ID inside of Merchant Track. Now, this account was set up for daily net settle where fees were being taken out daily. So I'm going to demo how we make this deposit in QuickBooks. So inside of QuickBooks, you would go to your banking make deposits. Inside of the deposit screen, you would click on your payments to deposit. And QuickBooks Enterprise allows you to sort by date or payment method. I'm just going to sort by date. And over on the right side here, I'm going to just select the payments that were on that deposit. So the one ending in 335, 794, 940, 13, 18, 491, and 637. Okay. The total of all those add up to the 1858.18 in that deposit. We're also going to need to account for the 3611 in fees that were taken out. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy my funding ID here. And I'm going to go ahead and add these payments to the deposit. Up in the memo field here, expand QuickBooks a little bit. I'm going to paste my funding ID in there. And then I'm going to say that Full Steam, if I can type correctly, charged me against my processing fees for this funding ID. And I'm going to put it against the class that I want it to go to for minus 3611. Okay. That's going to make this deposit net out to the deposit in the funding report inside of Merchant Track. 1822.07. Okay. This then becomes searchable inside of your advanced find inside of QuickBooks Desktop. And we will go ahead and save this. And then if you create a memorized report for fund with the memo field on it, and let's increase this to today, then you will see that funding ID on your reports inside of your QuickBooks to match the funding ID within our transaction sync history report and to match within RECUR360Pay in Merchant Track. So if I go back to my transaction sync history report, I could look at the next batch of deposits. Now this is a demo system, so it's going to show me what's going to fund tomorrow, even though tomorrow doesn't happen yet. And so if I click on that, it'll load that inside of Merchant Track. And I can see that these credit cards for 808.55 are on it. And this one is now set up for our daily gross settle, which means fees will come out on a monthly basis. So if I go back into QuickBooks, I'll just go ahead and make a deposit for those transactions. Do a save and new. We have 3504, 650, and 723. So we're going to grab 3504, 650, and 723. Those on the deposit. Go grab my funding ID. Now, since this is on daily gross settle now, there are no fees coming out. So the amount of my deposit just matches the funding ID. There's nothing additional to do there. Okay, and so now that funding ID shows in my deposit detail. All right, so that's QuickBooks Desktop. QuickBooks Online is very similar, except obviously it's a different interface. So in QuickBooks Online, if I go to New Bank Deposit, and if I go over here and I go into my Transaction Sync History Report, and if I want to look at all funded transactions, I can just filter our report on funded. I can also change the date range on here just to show a specific date range. And here I've got two deposits that funded, 25,769. This has a test transaction, so we'll disregard that. In QBO, we have the reference number field that matches up to the transaction ID. So again, up here, I'm going to go grab my funding ID. I'm going to put that into the memo field in QuickBooks Online. And I'm going to go ahead and select the transactions on this deposit. So 6855, 928, 074, 615, 688, and 761. Okay, this deposit does not have any fees on, so the total of the deposit is $1228.62. And so we can just do a save and new. Okay, I can go back to RECUR360PAY. I can go into 25803, grab that funding ID. Again, add that to the memo field. And this just has one transaction on it. It's an ACH, and it's the one ending in 733. And in QBO, if you go to your reporting, you can create a deposit report and then customize it to show the memo field, and then your funding ID will show there as well. Okay. Now, in addition, if a transaction processed today and you made a mistake on it, that's where we have functionality for voids in NSF. So inside of our settings under our payment processor, what do you want to do when a payment is found to be voided? Well, we want to void that corresponding payment in QuickBooks. What do you want to do if it gets charged back or comes back as NSF? Well, we want to create an NSF invoice. So these are all additional settings that you can enable to automate what's going to happen as well as fees. So if I go back to my reporting and I look at my transaction sync history report, and I look at anything that was processed today that's still in a batch state, I should be able to void that. So if I go into Merchant Track and I go to my transaction search, and I could filter this, but I'm just going to grab everything. I can go into one of these transactions and I can click void. So this is the transaction for $189.97. I'm going to go ahead and void this. Okay. So that transaction's been reversed. And now, if we give it a few minutes and click on Sync RECUR360PAY, it's going to update RECUR360PAY or RECUR360 that transaction was voided. And then it's going to void or delete the payment depending on what version of QuickBooks you have and reinstate that particular invoice. Now, this report updates twice a day depending on your time zone, but we'll say it updates at 6 a.m. Central Time and 6 p.m. Central Time. So you may come in here in the morning and see that its last update was, at that time. But anytime you go ahead and click on this, it will update the report as well as the statuses. And then you just need to do a refresh. Okay, so we can see that transaction was voided. And if I click into that invoice now, it's going to show that the invoice was reinstated. So if I go into Amy's bird sanctuary, we will see that whatever that invoice was will show as an open balance. Okay. And that one had a convenience fee on it when it processed. So this had the $85 plus tax. We do integrate with Avalara Avatax, and then it had a convenience fee on it originally that ended up getting removed when the invoice got reinstated. Now, NSFs will happen similarly, but they will create an NSF invoice. And so that's a little bit different functionality, but we have that defined inside of our Learning Center. So we have what I just went through, how to create a deposit in QuickBooks Desktop. That's within our Learning Center, the same with QuickBooks Online. We have the notice that we mentioned earlier and everything that is related to it, as well as how to sign up. And then we also have our bulk emailing of customers to ask them to update their payment method. So we've got some canned text that if you copy this, and then you go into RECUR360 and go to settings and go to email, you can scroll down to your customer default email and you can just paste that text in here. And this is a copy of what it'll look like. Okay. So this, instead of saying your company name, you'd put in, you drop in your own variables here. So you put in that instead of saying your company name. And instead of your company email address, we'll grab the email field, reply to email address. Okay. And so anytime you add those fields, you'll see what it'll look like when it gets sent. Save those settings. And then now if you go to the Customer Center, you can say, well, I'm waiting for my token migration, or certain tokens didn't migrate, or because I'm on Intuit, I can't do one. So show me all customers with payment methods, show me with active recurring transactions, and let's filter that for customers not on RECUR360Pay. Well, in this demo, they're all on RECUR360Pay, so I'm going to remove that filter. And what I can do is I can say, select all, and then I want to send a customer to email to all customers, and it's going to load with all that verbiage, and you're going to see an example on it. You can choose to include your pay online link, which we'll also discuss in a moment, as well as, do you want to get BCC'd on one of these so you have a copy of it? And if you have customers with sub jobs, do you want it to only go to the parent, or do you want to go to the sub jobs? And so if you click send this email, it's then going to queue it to go through SendGrid, which all of our emails go through. And then it will track when it's opened, or when it's delivered, and when it's opened, and so on, just like on invoice emails. So when you go into a customer, you will see their email history here, and whether it's an invoice email or if it's just a message that got sent out. And then if you click in delivery status, you will see when it was delivered and when it was opened. This is also accessible then via the email history report. And you could look at what was bounced, if any were, as well as any pending emails waiting to go out. Okay, and so this will show you opened and delivered or bounced or what have you. Okay, so we've made this as easy as we can. So as long as you're in the platform, you can get to the data that you need to do what you want to do. If it's just reporting, if it's make deposits, if it's void a transaction, if you need to refund a transaction, that's one of the automations we will be adding at a later date. But I'd have to go into a previous transaction that's already settled. So I'm going to go back to an older one here. And if I go into that transaction, I'll see the option to refund. And if you click refund here, you should refund for the whole amount. Otherwise, you're going to have to get creative in your accounting on how you want to account for it. So if I were to go ahead and refund this transaction, then it's going to be deducted from your net funding. But you're going to have to go ahead and account for that in QuickBooks somehow. So if I'm going to do a refund of 180.08, right, I need to go into my QuickBooks, in this case, QuickBooks Online. And in QuickBooks Online, I would go to that customer, Bob Day, and I would go ahead and refund that. So I would do a new refund receipt for Bob Day. Actually, we'll go take a look at what he bought first, since I wasn't inside of RECUR360 when I did that. So we'll go to customers. Now, this is actually a separate system that we set up, so this may not be in here, but I'll just create a refund receipt just to show you. So I'm going to go into customers, and we're going to do a refund receipt. You're then going to pick your customer. You're going to choose the item that you're refunding. You could be giving a credit, or you could be refunding for the exact same thing you sold. Okay. And then when you are doing refunds, you do not want to refund it from your bank account. You want to create a clearing account called ACH or NSF. Okay. So I'm going to create a new account here for my NSF clearing. I'm going to do this as an other current asset. Okay. And we're going to save and close. So the reason that I did that is because if we refund it out of undeposited funds in QuickBooks and that refund comes out of your bank account on its own, you can't have negative deposits in either version of QuickBooks. So therefore, and we also want to track if that happened. So we would want to look at our chart of accounts and see that in that clearing account, there's a negative balance. Now, this is a sample QuickBooks, so I don't have my online banking. But if I downloaded my online banking, it would download this negative transaction. And then we would just need to transfer this to our bank account. So inside of your online banking or inside of QuickBooks directly, once it comes out of your bank account, I can say I want to transfer from my bank account and transfer in to clear out the clearing for the 180.08. Okay, because it's showing me that that balance is there. And if I save and close, that's then going to account for zeroing the money out of the clearing account and taking it out of my checking account. Now, let me go back into that and let's reverse this a second. What if they took the money out on a deposit? So if I go into my funding status reports, if the money came out of this deposit, there would be a return total here. And at the bottom of this, it would show like what was paid to you. It would show what was being deducted. And then the net amount would be totaled up here. So inside of QuickBooks, if the money came out on a particular deposit, then we would just subtract it out at the bottom of the deposit. So I'm going to go to my previous deposits, say it was on this one. And at the bottom here, I would just say we're taking it out of the NSF account and reducing the deposit by that amount. Okay. So this would then make my deposit less to match what the funding would show in Merchant Track if it had it on there. And this would then reduce that account to zero and reduce what's going into my bank account. Okay. This is also, again, how you account for the daily net settle fees. Or any other fees that might be taken out from a deposit, you just subtract it at the bottom of the deposit screen in QBO and put it against an account. And obviously you can fill in more information if you need to. Now back in QuickBooks, all we did was add a line at the bottom of that deposit and then subtract the amount. So it's different but same. That's essentially what I wanted to go over today with everybody, is just show the tight integration between RECUR360 and RECUR360Pay and Merchant Track, how easy it is to make deposits, how easy it is to find data within our reporting, and so on. Another neat feature I do want to go over with RECUR360 that a lot of people aren't aware of is that if you're inside of RECUR360 and you're in your browser, if you're in Edge or Chrome, or if you're in on a Mac in Safari, you can go to this apps icon and you can create a desktop app for RECUR360. And so what that will do is it'll open up RECUR360 in its own app within a browser. And this allows you to tab between RECUR360 and other web applications. And when you're creating a web app, it'll ask you if you want to create a desktop shortcut as well as a shortcut on your taskbar. And so if that's the case, then once that's there, you can just click on that and it'll launch RECUR360 in its own app window. So if I click down here, it'll go ahead and launch that. And if I'm logged in a web browser, it'll just automatically log me in. And this is nice if you're using QBO, because then you can do the same thing with QBO, and that'll run as a web app as well. Oops, wrong application. So in QBO, I could pin that just the same as a web app, and that'll open up QuickBooks Online in its own window. Okay, so these are just little tips and tricks to make working between QuickBooks and RECUR360 easier. Merchant Track will always open up in a browser tab. It won't open up in another tab inside of RECUR360. So that's pretty much all I wanted to present today. Up at the top of the chat is a link to, again, download the presentation. After we're done with this meeting, I will do a recording and we will send the recording out. Again, some key dates are that you have until the end of the year to apply for RECUR360Pay without incurring a surcharge on payments that process in January and February. If you do not plan on signing up for RECUR360Pay, you can still use the RECUR360 platform after we disconnect your payment processing to automate your transactions. We'll send them into QuickBooks, and then in QuickBooks, you can continue to process your payments, but then you'll have to deal with setting up the recurring payment inside of QuickBooks. And there are a number of people that do use our platform just as a integration between their platform and QuickBooks, or as just a transaction automator, and then they handle their payments elsewhere. But if you want to continue to use our platform with payment processing, you will be required to sign up for RECUR360Pay. Again, our rates are less than virtually everybody that's even sent us their statements as it is. But if you want a custom rate analysis anyway, you just need to send that to us and then we'll get one sent out to you. As always, you can go to our website, which is RECUR360.com. And on the website, you can click on the live chat at the bottom. We are here during normal business hours. Obviously, we have to update it because it's no longer Thanksgiving. We will be closed on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. So there's a very short week now going into the holidays to get all of this done and to start your token migration requests so that your business is not affected over the next 30 to 60 days while we disconnect all old payment processors. If you have any other questions, again, come to our chat, send us an email at payments@recur360.com. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And Barbara's been, as I mentioned, we will add a recording of the meeting with a link. We'll upload it to our Dropbox and then we will email it out. Barb, anything else that I should review quickly before we bring this meeting to an end?
No, did we cover how to actually send the bulk email?
I did go over it.
Okay, I was
And we
answering
do
chats
have,
during that.
yeah, no problem. I saw that. You're rattling them off quickly. Yes, I did. And I went over the bulk email example that we have on our knowledge base in learn.recur360.com, as well as inside of RECUR360 itself, to go to the customer center, show customers with or without payment methods or active recurring transactions, filter it, and then select all.
Another question that came up, which I answered, but if you can show, is if we can show the report that will show everybody what payment methods are stored and what processor they're stored with.
What payment methods are stored and what processor they're stored with. So
So I showed
basically
them they could go to the reports menu and see payment methods there to see a whole list.
So if you have customers with payment methods, we will list, if they are not on RECUR360Pay, it would list all of your customers that are connected to another payment processor with the payment method in our system. Unfortunately, for this example, it's only connected to RECUR360Pay. So this would show you, if you're connected to Intuit, all of the customers that have a payment method that in your case is connected to Intuit or whatever processor you have. You can also go to the reports payment method list, and it's going to list, if you're still connected or only connected to an alternate payment processor, what payment processor that is. I might be able to get into our admin company and see if we have any accounts connected to other payment processors. One moment. So for this one's connected to Paya. Let's go into that. And if I go to reports and payment methods, right, it would say it's connected to Paya. And if we went to the customer center and say show with payment methods, now because this isn't connected to RECUR360Pay, it doesn't have the drop down to show all customers not connected to RECUR360Pay. So we tried to make this as logically filterable of who do I need to send the email to. Now, you could just send it to all of your customers and say, hey, you can pay me online via email or a credit card, and therefore send that email to them. And maybe people that pay you via check today will now start paying you online, so you get paid faster. Other questions, Barb, to show in the chat or show on screen?
No, some questions about token migrations, and I think I covered those, that once the file comes back to us, we can turn it around pretty quickly.
Got it. I did notice a couple customers in the chat and in our live chat and via email said over the last week or two, some of the links that we send out with your emails have been getting flagged as a suspicious website. We use a platform called SendGrid, and they were appending our URL with some extra characters that weren't aligned with our SSL certificate. So on Monday, we reworked all of that. So any new emails coming out of the system, say as of Tuesday morning, the link is corrected so that it won't get flagged as a suspicious website. Again, that wasn't that it was our platform, it's just the intermediary email platform we go through was appending the link and then redirecting it back to our website. And so that link got appended was being blocked. So now if somebody goes in and you open up their payment link, it's just going to go directly to where it needs to. It's not going to say sendgrid.recur360.com, and therefore it won't get blocked. Now that wasn't happening for everybody, but it was happening for people that had super tight, web blockers or antivirus and malware. But it should all be corrected now. We haven't had anybody else report it since they've sent out the new emails as of Tuesday morning. So that should all be corrected. And anytime you, or your customers have issues, you're the first ones to know about them before we do. So please come to the live chat on our website. And we usually get that stuff figured within minutes, if not hours, and always the same day. We've never had an outage. We've never been able to not correct something almost immediately. As long as it's within our control. Certain things are out of our control, and we work with other software integrations, and we got to tackle those down, like this recent one with SendGrid. Anything else on the chat, Barb, to go over?
No, I think everything else has been covered that I'm aware of. A few people asked for phone calls, so I wasn't sure what additional things they need addressed.
Okay, so we have that list. It still is best for you to come to our live chat, even if you want us to call you. That way we can track it and make sure your questions get answered. If you are using another processor, switching to RECUR360Pay does not cancel that processor. What we recommend is after you are on RECUR360Pay for at least 30 days, that you then go cancel your processor that you were using previously. You want to get your last statement. You want to make sure there aren't any other chargebacks or anything like that before you do that. So 30 days is usually good. 60 days is better. Paya has a cancellation request form for both credit card and ACH. NMI and USAE Pay each have one. Intuit, you would have to contact Intuit Payments. I think you can actually cancel within the Merchant Center, though I'm not 100% sure on that. So even if you signed up for NMI or USAE Pay or even Paya when you signed up for RECUR360, those were separate partnerships. You would have to cancel your account with them directly. And if you have any issues doing so, we can look up your previous merchant ID and facilitate an email to their cancellation departments to do that. And when we do that, we'll usually add in links, or like with Pi, here's the one for credit card, here's the one for ACH, and put them up in our Dropbox. So we try to make everything as readily available for you as you'll need. And like with Pi, you would send it to accountchanges@pi.com for their example. Many of them will say there is a cancellation fee. If and when they charge you that cancellation fee, you just need to forward us the statement with it on that, and then we'll forward that to our underwriting, and they will reimburse you. So far, we haven't seen any cancellation fees actually be incurred by anybody, so it's being subjective, or people just haven't forwarded us those statements. Okay. Well, that was it for today. Again, after this message is done compiling the recording, we will send out a link to everybody to watch it again. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. We will start doing more of these for various tips and tricks and things like that. Thank you for your time today. Have a good day.